And well, as always, let's get started with our purpose statement. Who would like to read the purpose statement today?
I read it.
All right,
Uh,
Yaniv, I'm
how
going to
about
put
you,
the
Frank?
share, and you got it, my friend.
Thank you, Frank. The 17th Club. We forge a brotherhood where no man walks alone, no potential is wasted, and every man is challenged to discover his purpose, develop his gifts, and live a life of sufficiency. Together, we unlock the man, unleash the mission, and the change the world.
Yeah, I love it. Change the world. That's what we're here to do. Change our world, which impacts the rest of the world. So, as always, I'd like to start out with a few celebrations. I also want to add, hey, look, if we don't have a celebration, but you're suffering a challenge right now or going through a challenge, I shouldn't say suffering, going through a challenge, please share that as well, because maybe somebody in the room can help you out. So, who's got a win they'd like to share?
Yeah,
Go ahead, Phil.
I got one. So, had a really great event that had an opportunity to go, and it was far exceeded what my expectations were as a book thinkers. So, I was there with Cleona and made some great connections. I have about 15 or 16 people to follow up with. Funny, one of the guys here played for another high school that beat my high school in football. His dad was a legendary coach, and now this guy's a wrestling coach. I said, "Oh, you have to meet my karate champion, Luis, and come into our mastermind." So I have 12 people to invite into our mastermind. One is actually Chris Green. I saw him, met him in person. Nicholas Hutchison, who has been
Yep.
combined with the NHI for a while. And Michael, you would have thrived here. It was an absolutely great group of people, and just so many good things, and an impact of that's going to go far beyond. So it was just really a great event.
Nice. Nice.
Jimmy Quick was there. He was one of
Congratulations.
the keynote speakers twice, 2 days in a row.
Yeah, nice. Consistent, never-ending improvement, right? Just continue to
Yeah.
go out there and learn, expose yourself to material. Excellent job, Phil. Thanks for sharing. Anyone else? All right, go ahead, Mr. Flo.
Yeah, so you already know for me, being on vacation and recognizing and having the awareness to hold this mind state that I've already have the goal that is achieved to live in the wish fulfilled, as Neville Goddard would say. So yeah, that's my goal. That's my win for today. Being here,
Great.
living it out, living
Yeah,
in real
very.
time. That's my
Rob's on
win.
vacation and enjoying life right now in Florida. That's a wonderful thing. And look, we got to take time to celebrate, right? Take time to relax. Take time to recreate. What does recreation do for your imagination and for your creative vision? Right. So there's a lot that is going to tie right into what we're talking about today. Anyone else? All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started. We're talking about imagination. So in Think and Grow Rich, the book is imagination, or the chapter is imagination. In The Keys to Success, which is a book that I am deeply studying right now, they call it creative vision. So they're both the same, they just have a different title, right? So when I say the word imagination or creative vision, what comes to mind for you? As you were reading the chapter, did anything stand out to you?
Everything that holds in our mind, we can create in our reality. Everything we wish fulfilled, we can create in our own reality. I just explained that to you earlier, Frank, on when I first came. I had imagination living in my own house, having my own garden, having my own driveway. To some of you, it's not a big thing, but when you have living in a very bad neighborhood with such a horrible neighbors that you just couldn't live there anymore. Me and my wife, we just couldn't live there anymore. And out of nowhere, this house came up. And this is the time when I sold my house in Israel that my dad used to live, rest in soul. And I'm looking at this, everything aligns, everything what you wish is aligned with what you want, basically, through the power of imagination. And I was imagining the exact same house that had my own car park, that had my own garden, and I have my own space, my own freedom. And there you go. Everything comes from imagination.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, being able to visualize what it is that you want, right? Go
Exactly.
ahead, Phil.
Yeah, that's so good Yaniv, as you're talking about too. And what's for me, keeping a vision, and I really love that creative vision. What do we see? Because I keep this stick person in front of me all the time, and imagination is one of the powerful six intellectual faculties, as Bob Proctor used to teach. And imagination is that it's the difference between looking at your current results and where you already have inside of you all the results to be where you want to be. And imagination, we have to tap into that energy, that power for what is the feeling of the goal already achieved? What is the vision? What do we see? How do we see ourselves? How do we see the world? And without imagination, those things go away and we look outside of ourselves only because we're not seeing. And this comes down to faith, because I love the quote, Bob Proctor talks about faith. Faith sees the invisible, so it believes the incredible, so we can have what everybody else calls the impossible. Without imagination, the TV show, the movie doesn't happen. And so that's why I like this. I love this chapter, and it's so powerful. It's really beyond what we. I don't know what's the word I'm trying to up with. Beyond energy, or beyond. The words escaping me, but anyway, you guys know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, what's interesting, Phil, is without imagination, we wouldn't have anything that we have in the world today. If you think about it, everything is actually built twice. First, it's built in the imagination, then it's created physically in reality, right? So everything, whether it be the car that's sitting in your garage, the house that you're living in, the building that you work in, all of those things were created in someone's imagination before they ever became a reality, right? So everything is built twice. Rob McCaslin, go ahead, sir. You're muted, Rob.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I thought it was interesting. When you mention imagination, sometimes you kind of think, oh, imagination, fairy tale. Well, really peeling it back, it's that, and I was doing some ChatGPT deep dives, peel it back, peel it back, peel it back, and one of the interesting things that came up was, there's thoughts and there's ideas, and imagination is that bridge between those thoughts and ideas, and then taking action on those thoughts and ideas. Because I also asked, what's the risk of imagination? And the risk to imagination is no action. If you sit there and you're just in this world of imagination, well then you're it's fake news. You're not living in reality. If you take that action towards your ideas and thoughts, using that imagination to create that world, it can become a reality. So I thought it was really interesting. Like Phil said, it's a powerful. It takes another level of thought to be able to really see through, the perception of what imagination is. It's a vehicle.
Yeah, Rob, you're right. It's a vehicle, it's a tool, right? In fact, Napoleon Hill talks about imagination being the workshop of the mind. I mean, how many times? I can't even count how many times I've gone to bed with a thought on my mind, and then I'm kept awake for hours because my imagination is just going like crazy. It's working on what I fed to it, and so many times it's given me thoughts and ideas that I could then put into play when I engaged in the next day. The key is to be able to capture it, right? And so, what we need to have some type of habit of doing is capturing the thoughts that happen in our imagination. I remember way back when I was a young kid, I remember listening to people talking about having a notepad on their nightstand so that when they had these thoughts, when those thoughts woke them up in the morning, they could actually write a note down so they didn't forget about it in the morning. Now, how often has your imagination been going crazy, whether it be in bed before you go to sleep, early in the morning when you're just waking up, maybe you're in the shower and you don't have a way to capture it, and then by the time you're ready to go to work, you've lost those thoughts that were in your imagination, right? So try to find a way. In today's day and age, we got iPhones, we got all kinds of ways to be able to record those thoughts as they come to us. So why not take advantage of those tools? So great. Yeah, let the imagination work for you. Go ahead, Leroy.
Yeah, interesting conversation. I like to think also imagination is, for your relationships, how do you want your relationship to be? And yesterday I was talking with my wife and we were talking about that. Like we have to learn to actually like where we're at. Like uh Earl Nightingale says, think of the person you want to be and then start acting like that person. You have to actually start acting like it. Don't, I mean, not just acting, but being that person. So I think that takes a lot of imagination because we've been programmed to be another person who hasn't yet attained the goal. If we start believing and acting like the person that has already attained the goal, then then we will then that will come into our into our space.
Yeah, I thank you, Leroy. I think
So
in Hill's writings, he talks about act as if, right? So act as if you are already the person that you want to become. And what a great question. Who do you want to become? What a great conversation in your relationships. How do you want to live? What do you want it to look like? Right? How do you want to present yourself to the world? And then do that. So before you can do it, you have to have a description. You have to have a picture. You have to have a vision. What does my perfect life look like? Right? So it's for us. So many people judge their success by what somebody else wants. But if we feed into our own personal imaginations and start to imagine based on who I am, what is it that I want? Based on who we are as a couple in a relationship, what do we want and how do we want to live our lives? Right? You letting that imagination run wild and believing that you can achieve whatever it is that you can imagine. Right? That's the other part, right? Whatever the mind can conceive and believe it can achieve. Right? If you couldn't achieve it, your imagination would not allow you to think it. Go ahead, Mr. Conway.
Yeah, it's one of the people with I have an imagination that was within Napoleon Hill's inner circle. Neville Goddard in the Power of Awakened, imagination. Who is your imagination? The thing is, too, it can be used in good ways or bad ways. So we have to be diligent in our use and integrity of the imagination because sometimes people being accused of having too much imagination, they're telling false stories, they're telling false narratives, they're in tune with sometimes an agenda that's opposite of what you know we want to present, and sometimes people are it's a psychotic illness, right? So there's illness and there is biologically there's issues that are going on. It's not just thinking differently, it's just the brain is broken. So we accuse those people of having a high imagination as bad. Whereas people who are like Steve Jobs, for example, or Elon Musk, they have a vision of things that are very different than the ordinary person has. But all of us have exactly those same skills and gifts to see the things. We just have to believe in ourselves and use imagination. The way we use it and apply it is key. Not just that we are aware of, oh, here's a great movie, here's a great picture, here's a great, feeling to be. But so we have to be integrity with that, I think.
Yeah, yeah, I love that, Phil. I think what I just heard you say was, imagination gives us a window, an opportunity to see what could be, both negative and positive, and we get to choose how it is we want to bring that into reality by the actions that we take, right? And so, yeah, what a great way to look at it. What a great way to define what your definite purpose in life should be. By letting your imagination run wild. As you're talking, I'm sitting here thinking, okay, so sometimes have you ever watched a movie and you see something really exciting happening and you just say to yourself, man, that would be cool. Well, yeah, it would be cool. And by the way, it can be cool. You can do that, right? So take that thought and say, okay, how can I do that? What is it that I need to take action on? Because that's the next step. Imagination feeds the motivation, but action feeds into reality, right? So being able to make that transition, don't just dream about it because you saw it. Make it happen. If you truly want it, you can have it. Michael, go ahead, buddy.
Frank, I'm not so sure, buddy. I've been trying to fire webs out of my wrists for several years now, and it just doesn't happen, right?
Well,
I
Can't.
we
like
have to
that,
be,
Michael.
sometimes we have to be reasonable, right, Michael?
I'm still try to fly myself, but
Yeah, yeah. I keep
I'm
saying
still feeling
flame
like
on, and I don't
myself
burst
being a
into
Superman,
flames.
trying to fly myself off, right? The
Yeah.
building.
You'd
Not
look
yet.
good in the underwear, though, Yaniv. That's for sure.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, with my
So,
six pack, right?
yeah, I was gonna ask. Yeah, so Rob said something earlier about how there's a risk to imagination, right? Or there is, what are the consequences of it? So why can imagination be risky? Why, when you imagine something happening, is there a risk?
I think, may I answer this? Maybe,
Sure.
why there's a risk? Because can't really see ourselves doing that in a way that um maybe could be a risk for us to do. It's like, give an example. There's a shark in the sea, but I can't really see myself going to the sea. I might risk myself being eaten by a shark, but should I give it a try? But my imagination takes over, and you start rem remembering the movies that you used to watch in 1980s Jules,
Mm.
right? I say, shit, my imagination started going like, hey, you shouldn't go that. You
So
shouldn't
it
do that.
builds fear,
Right,
right?
exactly.
Yeah. Okay. I hate the false
Sometimes,
evidence. I like false expectation appearing real.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay. So it creates fear. Okay. Yeah. All right. I get it. Any
How
other
about,
reasons why we
yeah,
think that?
how about criticism?
So more fear.
Yeah. Yeah. What are people going to say about, what about the guy who's, and I keep hearing it constantly here recently, people leaving corporate life
Yeah.
to do something out of the ordinary for them. Think about what all the people surrounding them, what they had to say about that decision. I'm recently thinking about one of the cook. My wife loves cooking shows, and one of the things that we enjoy together is dives, diners, and drives, or whatever the triple D. And this past week, there were a couple of times when he said, "So, husband and wife left their corporate life and went
Mm.
and opened a freaking food truck." Or a cafe. And what causes people to do that? Well, they recognized they wanted something different in life that corporate life wasn't giving them, and they just took action.
Yeah.
You know, but think about what they had to overcome in order to take that action,
Yeah.
right? The
Michael,
conversation. Yeah, go ahead.
to answer your question, Michael, uh, what's the risk? And I don't know why I just thought of this, but my first ex-wife, I was a young man, my early 20s. And I remember we were having a hard time financially. And I asked her, I said, is there something, because she wasn't working and we were young, we were in our early 20s. And, I said, is there something you can do, something you want to do to help out financially? And she says, I've always wanted to sing. And I was like,
Hmm.
what the fuck? That's not going to make us money. Come back to Earth. Come back. Stay on planet Earth. So I don't know. I think imagination sometimes unchecked, when it's not realistic, can take you down the wrong path.
Okay.
Anyone have a comment about that?
I I have something related to that.
I don't know. I got to,
I
Louis.
want to find it. Rob, did she have a good voice? Like, that's the question. Could she?
I could tell Michael wanted to ask something. He just couldn't do it.
Well, I guess if, like what Phil said in here, like we need to operate within human capabilities. So could she do it? She just couldn't do it unaided, as Phil would have put it.
I love it. I love it. Go ahead, Luis.
Well, number one is the risk also to lose your identity. Um, and we don't know it to a certain point, but remember, Dr. Joe told us that, right? He started to start playing music at his 60s, and the first thing that he came to his head, well, I'm gonna lose all this. I have to risk my all this writer and being in the secret and all that. I'm gonna have to turn that. What if I fail? And da, 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 da. But I've learned also too, though, when we focus on risks, that's the meaning that we're giving to it to change. I don't see it as risks. I always focus on the good that can come out of it. I really don't personally don't see the negative things side of things. I used to, but also one thing that I've learned is because of martial arts, and it's been playing in other areas of my life. But in what we are consistent, like I'm gonna put martial arts, but you all are consistent at something. That's what you're so good at what you do. But when the transition from being an athlete to an instructor is not too hard because you're still training, you're still going here and there. But when you become an executive and you don't have to fight or train like you used to, that comes with a shift. And many of it hit me. It is also like seeing, I'm going back to what I first said, is the change of identity. When you don't see or you're not perceived as who you were, what
Very
brought you
true.
to a certain level of success, also, right? We know that that same person, that same mindset, that same structure, belief structure, processes, all that, it's not going to take you to earn twice. It's not going to take you to do the next thing. So it's that shift. I think that's the risk that we see or perceive that, and but also again, when if we're fixating our minds into what is the risk, what do I have to lose? That's the meaning that we're doing to not just that, but everything else in life. We're focusing on the negative and what the bad things that can go, how things can go bad instead of the good things. So maybe we need to start using our imagination to create a way better, more, what's the word that uh, the end that you want, compelling, right?
I
Right?
like
Like
that.
it's
Yeah.
like that, what I'm gonna taste, that victory, that money, that status, that home, that pool, that whatever, it is worth it.
Yeah, guys. So, I
Well done.
mean,
Yeah, I see
part
that.
of the reason we have this room every Tuesday is to help and support men, right? And I think, Luis, what you just shared in the room about identity fits every one of us as we transition through different stages in life. And it's that lack of identity or that loss, not necessarily the loss of the identity we once had. Now, what am I going to do? Now, who am I? How do I fit into this new world? I'm going through that myself, coming from actively being an active real estate broker and out there shaking hands and kissing babies and hooking and jabbing and negotiating, doing all those things. And then all of a sudden, my day is not filled with those activities anymore.
Yeah.
Who
Oh
am I
crap!
now?
Now, what do I do? Right?
Yeah. Who
And
am I
so I
now?
think,
Yeah.
yeah, who am I now? Exactly right, Michael. And so and that's a challenge that a lot of men have trouble adjusting to, right? Michael, I see your hand up. Go ahead, buddy.
Yeah. So I wanted to jump in on the why imagination is risky because it's obviously not like it's key. So it's really crucial, but there is a risk to it. And for me, it's the difference between watching Rocky and becoming a boxer. So the fact is that there's a molecular experience that the body or the mind specifically, but the body goes through it as well, but the mind goes through, right? Like when you want something, there's this anticipation, you're getting a rush of dopamine, right? That's a wonderful feeling, right? This rush, right? Like right now, Rob is going to fly to the Philippines if he's not already gone, right? And there will be a rush of anticipation, Rob. There will be dopamine flooding through your body, right? And then you've got this oxytocin that comes in following the dopamine all the time, the trust and connection hormone, right? That shows up. And then from there, you've got the serotonin that starts to flood into the mind, where status and prestige and power, right? Their serotonin is pumping you up. You're getting ready. And then you get endorphins, which is the thing that allows you to do things without feeling pain, right? And following endorphins very quickly, your body needs adrenaline, right? So that all of the blood and the power flows to your limbs. You get extremely intense and you're able to accomplish incredible things. Lewis knows this experience very well, being a fighter. So does Frank. So does Rob. Anybody else who's been in combat before understands this. Yaniv understands this very well, right? There's a molecular structure that happens. There's anticipation, right? There's something going on. It's addictive. Your mind craves it. It wants it. That's why social media is such a powerful tool. Not only is it manipulative, but it's highly molecularly inducing, right? You're getting this flood of hormones. And so for me, the tricky part about imagination is that, as Frank put it at the beginning, you experience things twice. You build them in your mind first, then you build them in reality. Way too many fucking people get stuck in the first stage.
Yeah, I know many of them. Yeah, you're right.
Right? They imagine it. The risk for that I have felt over and over again in my life is that I imagine the thing being built and then it's done and I didn't actually build the thing. I imagine the book I wrote, the pieces of it and everything else, and yet I never wrote the book, right? I imagine this business I could have built, right? And all the different elements into it and the audiences and the crowds and the people I'm serving and the value that I'm delivering, all those things, and yet I never actually built the business. Right? I mean, it's different now, but that's how I felt, right? I imagined being an actor and performing on stages and being in movies. And although I tasted that lifestyle, I was never committed to the real result I needed. Although in my mind, I'd lived that life 1,000 times. And I think for me, to me personally, that was always the true danger of imagination. Because I was like Lewis, I often never saw the world as negative. I didn't see consequences. I really only saw great results, which meant the imaginative process was incredibly addictive because I was only ever getting fucking rewarded. I was never being punished for my actions, but I never took the actions. I imagined the actions. And so for me, that was always the big danger about imagination, was that I created this beautiful thing that the universe or God or whoever you see it wanted me to do, and yet I never fabricated it into reality. I let it live in my mind and never built it out of laziness, procrastination, fear, you name it. There's 1,000 different reasons why we could get stuck. But that was always the risk for me, as I went through the experience, but it was an imaginary one.
Yeah, you go through it in your mind. You didn't actually take the action. So many of us fall into that trap, right? So the question that's coming to my mind is, okay, so how do we get out of the mind and take the action? And one of the questions that I reflect on is, well, what's the worst that could happen? If I take action, what's the worst that could happen?
And I think you need accountability, Frank. I think the one thing so many of us shy away from is somebody else stand. Like I've told you guys about stick.com, right? Like accountability, where it's like, if I don't do X, if I don't achieve Y result within a specific framework, there's actual consequences, right? We live in an incredible world. Everything's basically taken care of.
Yeah.
Right? I saw a guy yesterday, you guys, literally, he's cooking from like a little teeny tiny Bunsen burner with a grill beside my store out in Abbotsford. He lives out of his car, right? His car is stuffed full of all sorts of stuff. He had this little dog with him, right? I brought the guy some food from my store and chatted with him for a little bit. And I didn't get too deep into what was going on with him. It was a little difficult. But the fact is like, none of us have that going on. I see pretty rooms behind every single one of us. We're all here with incredible internet connections, able to communicate across vast distances in the world, all in real fucking time. You know, Rob's falling in love with somebody literally who is like a 15, 16-hour flight away. She's, 8,000 miles from him. What a world we live in. And so the consequence, like, and I guess what I'm getting at is that all of our consequences are more altruistic than they are real. And so then it becomes accountability. So what are you actually going to hold yourself accountable to? What's going to be painful for Yaniv? What's going to be painful for Michael? What's going to be painful for Leroy?
Yeah.
Because the
And that's
pain
different.
motivates you, man. You run faster when there's a tiger chasing you than when there like the love of your life could be in front of you. You're running faster when there's a tiger.
Yeah, and it's different for everybody, right, Michael?
Yeah.
Each one of us there's something that's different. Money doesn't necessarily scare me, but reputation might
Yeah.
impact me deeper. I'm reflecting back to God back in the 1980s when I decided I was going to run a marathon, right? I belonged to this running group. We used to run every week. We do 5Ks, 10Ks. I think the longest we ever did was a half marathon. Then one day I decided I was going to run a marathon. That's 26.2 miles. I had never done that in my entire life. And so my motivation was I'm a Marine. I was stationed with Marines. I told every freaking Marine that I was engaged with what I was going to do. You want to talk about accountability?
Yeah.
Tell a Marine you're going to do something, then don't freaking do it. Trust me, every time they see you, they're going to ask you, how's the training going? Or they'll remember up until the date that it was supposed to happen. And they'll ask you, so how'd the marathon go? And for me to face the fact that I might have to tell them I didn't do it,
Ugh.
I failed. I mean, that was more fearful for me than anything else in life. And that's exactly how I stuck with my training routine, how I actually was able to run my first marathon. Not only was I able to run it, I ran it respectively within a time period that I would never have expected because I felt that accountability, that pressure, right? So that's different for everyone. Mike, I think when you talked about the app, what was it, Stick With It or Stick It?
Stick.com. Yeah.
Yeah. It's talking about money. Okay, well, if I don't do X, I'm going to have to write a check to
Well, but
the
it's also
charity.
status, right? So it was
Yeah.
right. It was money. So it was we were using Rob as the example. Would Rob send his ex-wife $10,000
Yes.
anonymously, right? And a message going, Rob failed in his goal.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it states the goal. Rob failed at XYZ.
Yeah. And she's
Woo!
loving it she's loving it that he failed. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right?
The 10K is nasty, but the
Yeah.
hey, how did that go, hun? Hun, how
Yeah.
did
Huh?
that
Yeah.
go?
Yeah. I want to hear the story because I really want to,
Yeah.
bathe in that, right?
Oh man.
Speaking of Rob, Rob's got his hands up. Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah. Go down a different rabbit hole with imagination, Frank. So driving around this city, you see some crazy people in every city. You're going to see it. But one of the things that I've done lately in my life, I used to judge people really, really hard,
Mm.
and I was very cold about it. But as I've grown older, I've learned to be a lot more sympathetic and look at things from somebody else's point of view. And so when you see somebody living in a tent, or like Michael said, the guy in the car, I couldn't imagine living like that. But imagine what they went through to get like that. Maybe mental health, maybe drugs. But imagine the more horrible story of abuse, loss, abandoned. So there's always a story, and just imagining that story, whatever it could be, might be, just your heart goes out to them. You don't feel like, oh, what a piece of shit. You feel like God bless them. I hope they find a way. So just using an imagination to be sympathetic has helped me a lot in my life.
Yeah, I love that, Rob. Thanks for that share. And for those of you, I don't know if any of you have heard of a gentleman called his nickname is Father G. He's a priest. He's a Catholic priest. His last name is Gregory. I just know him as Father Gregory. And I was introduced to him over this past weekend. He gave a commencement speech for, I think it was Pepperdine University, and he talks about exactly what Rob was just describing. What we see every day it doesn't have to be a big city. It could be any city where people are just living at that level where we couldn't imagine. And I think Father G calls it they're on the edges. They're living on the edges of the humanity that we live in, and they're oftentimes discarded by the rest of the world as being a waste of humanity. And he has a different perspective on that. He grew up in L.A. and actually he ran a church in L.A. as well in one of the strongest gang infested areas in the city, and he created an organization called Homeboy, And what a great organization. If you Google it, Father G, homeboy, you can find videos on YouTube, talks about such all the stuff that he's done. So he's used his imagination to create something to help the people that he feared most were going to be lost to the world. And he's a multi-billion-dollar company serving those communities by giving employment to the people that everyone else was throwing away, right? So that brings to question, you know, in using imagination or creative vision, you know, can we use it to look for possibilities? You know, look for possibilities of how could I handle this situation differently? And let that imagination, that creative vision show you a different way, right? Luis, I think I saw your hand up, my friend. Go ahead.
Yeah, you guys were talking about tough times and all that. I'm by no means, and I like what you say, Michael, but 17 years ago, 2008, 2009, actually, early 2009, I had to sleep in my car for 2 nights. I have nowhere to go. So when I see all this, I said, fuck yes, absolutely. I've earned it. I started over from zero. So fuck that. Suffering and all that. Fuck that. I'm done with it. So my imagination is I'm gonna get it no matter what. And yes, absolutely. Sometimes I get into the comfort level. Absolutely. There are other areas of my life where absolutely I'm not. And to me is my wife. I will never want to lose like a loser in front of my wife, ever.
Yeah.
It's not money.
Yeah.
I can care less about fucking money. I can care less because I made it without it at one point. But to disappoint her after she believed in me when I had a zero, I was already dating her when I had to sleep in my car. And and that's one of the reasons why I love America. Because I could have not, it would not, it would have been way harder to do that in Mexico. Way harder.
You
That's
know,
one of the reasons why I love America.
Michael is just brutal in his comments, guys. Luis, he says, and it was a PT Cruiser. Just imagine living in that ugly of a car,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Imagine. So that's is that. But no, when I see all that and when I see no, yeah, we're not dying, or we're right now we're not like I'm sending money to this guy in Kenya for an orphanage because these kids are that what hurts me. That's sex slavery kids and all that. That's what hurts me.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm trying to do. And but yes, no, I've been there and yes, I see pretty. I'm happy for you guys, and let's just freaking let's don't stay complacent. Let's just there's always something better. But you're right, Michael. I get it. We get into the comfort zone, but at one point, every single one of us, I believe. Well, I'm not. I don't believe. I know. We're like, what the fuck is this? This is the best that I can get out of life. Is this the best that all these amazing things that is this the best that I can do? Right? And that's when the inner conversation changes completely.
I love the way
But
you
yes,
just changed. I love the way you just changed that, Luis. First, you said, "Is this all there is?" But then you said, "Is this the best that I can do?" That's an entirely different perspective,
hmm
right? The person who accepts what they have is, you know, this is okay. This is good. I got it. I made it. But the person who says, what could I do better?
hmm
That's a different type of person, right?
hmm
So I just wanted to call that out.
No,
Those are
no,
two
beautiful.
completely
Because I'm
different
still want a
presentations,
freaking
right?
pool back there.
Exactly, exactly. We still want something else. We still can have something else, right? So
Well,
don't settle.
and I wanted to jump on something real quick here. I know Yaniv's got his hand up, but I just wanted to add something to what Lewis said because I think a lot of us haven't had the experience that Lewis has had, where we were in our car, we hit that level of a low. So I think what we have to do though is we have to put a consequence in our lives that represents that. Because if you, that's what I'm getting at, right? Is that just because Lewis actually had that maybe forced upon him or some other element of his life made that happen. And I don't pretend to know any of your guys' deep life stories. But for me, I've never had that level of consequence. So I have to go out and manufacture it for myself. Right? If I don't have it by reality, just it happening to me, I grew up, I am a white, upper middle class suburban kid from Canada. Right? What type of consequences am I going to have with entrepreneurial parents that made good money like that? Like talk about a smooth ride. It's not a crazy ride up to like billions of dollars, but it's like there ain't a whole lot of risk here. I could even I have all my
No,
health care paid for too, right? So I
can,
got to
can I interrupt
manufacture
some?
consequence.
You could. The drugs, the sex, the betting, all that, and you avoided it.
Well, you think I did.
You're here.
Here.
I
Yes,
love it.
that's
Yeah.
true, right? That's true. But and so you're right. I dodged those things. I was terrified of the consequences of those things. So, but I had to manufacture consequence, and I think that that's something that as we get more comfortable, we don't want to do. We don't want to manufacture accountability and consequence, and that's where risk takers, as we call them, right? The Elon Musks of the world that say, "I'm going to generate." I'm going to take on $1 trillion in debt so I can be worth $1 trillion and do amazing things. There's consequence, huge consequences, right,
Yep.
to that. But they're not because Elon Musk had some sort of compromising factor in his life, right? They're because he decided to take on the risk. And I think that's the part that often I miss is it's like, no, 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 Michael, you have to take on a bigger risk, a bigger consequence, a bigger challenge to have a bigger result, right? In Lewis's case, whatever happened, he was there, and that's how that worked itself out. Now, I mean, as some of you know, I had to go through cancer treatment last summer. So, I mean, I manifested something that was going to prove to me how fucking tough I was and how strong I was.
Yeah.
Right. So, anyway,
Yeah.
my
Yeah, exactly.
my 13 cents.
Yeah, yeah, and along with that risk, we have to have vision. And so when I think of Elon Musk, yeah, he's taking on a huge risk, but he also has a humongous vision of what he wants to see happen, right? So what's your vision look like for the future? Yaniv, you took your hand down. Come on in, brother.
Yeah, thank you, Frank. I just want to add a few things what Michael said. First of all, Michael, I hope you cancel is now has been gone. You fully good, good. I'm happy to hear. Because the C word is the most crucial word ever, man. Because I know
Mhm.
um and also risk takers, we all risk takers, but we all winners in one way or another, whatever it takes. I mean, we've been through. Since we were born, we've been through a lot, but we don't really notice it that the life we've been through, that we generated the life we wanted because the power of imagination. Now, Napoleon Hill has placed in Thinking Grow Rich synthetic imagination and creative imagination. Now, if we actually put it together with our own identity as a synthetic imagination with identity, we're just gonna be as drifters, just as a normal, right? Do what he does, do what she does, do what the boss says, do that. But if we're gonna identity ourselves in a creative imagination, that's a completely different story. I mean, I use the majority of my life, I use imagination, but I didn't understand what imagination really until I studied this philosophy. Really and really did because I actually can say it loud and there that I actually been saved from death 3 times. One time from armed forces. I've been in the hospital 6 months. There were Given a story, I was escorting tanks. I used to be a combat driver in intelligence unit in the Israeli Defense Force, and so I had to transfer escort tanks from one side of the border to another side of the border on the Gaza Strip. And out of nowhere, um, my vehicle went on an IED. Um, it wasn't pleasant scene to see, but I woke up in a hospital. I've been in a coma for 2 months in coma, and I've been in the hospital for 6 months. But while I was lying in the hospital, I was imagining to myself, I'm going to get better. I'm going to be better. I'm going to walk again. I'm going to do this. I'm going to come back to my unit. I'm going to come back this. Everything what we do is through imagination. Because if we didn't have imagination, we won't be a creative people. And through faith and purpose comes from imagination as well. So all I could say, being a creative person through through your own creative imagination. Living in the car, I've been living in the car, I've been living in the tent, I've been living in poverty. But hey, everything all comes down is because the way I used to live is because I used to be living on a synthetic imagination. I never used to create something new myself. But now, like Louis says, I've got this, I'm blessed. I've got a roof over my head, I've got food in the fridge, I've got a loving wife. Hey, I'm not a millionaire, but hey, I'm still here on this call. I'm happy. I'm wealth as it is. I'm wealthy as it is because wealth is not about money. Wealth is about the quality of life you have. And I just want to make this clear. Creative imagination is very, very important to know how we can actually create something new, can take us one place to another place in our life.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Yaniv. I'm looking at a comment in the chat, and I can't let this one go by. This comment is, sometimes I think I haven't suffered enough to succeed. Right.
Who said that?
Yeah. Sometimes I think I haven't suffered enough to succeed. You know, Alex, why did you put that in the comment, brother? He's there.
Well, I hear you all guys, and sometimes I feel uh sometimes I feel no, I'm the Rick's bottom now, and I don't know so what I think I need go for this place. Luis, lo que quiero tratar de entender es que a veces no sé por qué siento que tengo que llegar a ese lugar forzosamente.
He's saying that he doesn't understand why he feels like he needs to go to that place to suffer.
You know, and I mean, I don't know. Michael, I see your hand up. Do you have maybe a response for that?
Yeah, I fundamentally my instinct tells me is that it's two reasons. One, Alex is young, right? He wants to trial himself, right? There's a part of trial by fire that a lot of us feel we have to go through in order to succeed. But the other part of it too is that I think Alex is a warrior, right? And warriors want to battle.
I just want to clarify. He's saying warrior, as in warrior, not worrier, as
not
in
worrier,
always worrying about
warrior.
That, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Right. I mean, look what he's chosen to do with his life, right? He's in karate. He wants to build a karate school, right? He's a fighter. So I think one of the things we run into is that it is a false belief, Alex, that you need to suffer a low in order to achieve a high.
Exactly.
That is why I talk so much about having consequences, right? It is the fear of that. Like, you don't have to, my man, you do not have to get eaten by the tiger to know that it's fucking shitty to get eaten by a tiger. To run your fastest ever when there is a tiger on your heels does not require you to have been eaten before. So what are the consequences? Like, if you want to achieve amazing things with your karate school, right? Then do something that puckers your ass. Go get $250,000 in loans to build something incredible and start marketing the shit out of it and do something that terrifies you, right? That, like, a very good friend of mine, he was two good friends of mine. He was employed by one of my mentors as his sound guy for events. And he was really overweight. He was about 300 pounds, and he was always talking about losing weight, blah, 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 blah. And finally, my mentor said to him, I've had enough. I've listened to you talk about this for 18 months, right? And it was January. It was a new year. He said, what are you going to do to change it? And he said, well, I'm going to lose 60 pounds this year. And he said, that's great. What are the consequences? Here were the consequences, okay? The guy had a new baby coming. He had 6 months right? His new baby was coming. And my old mentor said to him, here's the consequence. If you achieve your goal, I pay you double for the next year. If you fail, you work for free. And that guy had a year to lose 60 pounds. Not easy. That's a lot of weight, right? Especially when you're not going through radiation and chemotherapy like I did to lose my 40 pounds, right?
Yeah, you always take the easy way out, Michael.
Yeah, always. I'm such a cheapskate. Yeah. So the fact is that there were nights where the guy was motivated to do it, Alex. It was like, yes, I'm powerful. I can do this. It feels great, blah, 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 blah. But there were nights where he's like, ah, the hell with this bullshit. I'm not doing it. And weeks would go by where he wouldn't work out. But guess what? He had 3 months to go. He'd only lost 18 pounds. No, he'd only lost 22 pounds, sorry. He had 38 pounds to go and he had less than 90 days. And he was like, holy shit, I'm going to have to work for free. For a year, my wife just had this brand new baby. Now they had two. She's on maternity leave, right? Huge consequences, Alex. The consequences for him were massive. Not only was he not going to make money, but then he had to look at his wife and say, I've got to work for free for this guy. As Lewis said, is there anything worse than having to grovel on your knees in shame to the woman that you love? Right? So the consequences were huge. He didn't have to suffer some terrible, terrible accident in his life to accomplish something amazing and awesome. All he had to do was have the consequence of that suffering looming over his head. And it was real. It wasn't fabricated. It wasn't pretend. This was a real consequence. Right? And guess what? He achieved his goal. Right? It was December the 20th or something like that. And he's like, you know what? I'm going to eat like a crazy person for the next 7 days over the holiday season because I've lost 60 pounds, 62 pounds or whatever it was.
That's right. What a great example, Michael. Thank you for sharing that story. That is, I mean, that story alone makes this whole hour together powerful for anybody who's in the room, for anybody who's going to listen to this replay. I mean, it's are you willing to pay the price, right? What's the consequence? Are you willing to pay the freaking price? And if you're not, move on. If you are, use that energy to drive you forward and never, ever quit. Plain simple. Pay the price. Go ahead, Mr. Conway.
How do I follow that, right?
Got me.
It's perception really, and like the brain wires us to survive. It doesn't wire us for success. It doesn't wire us for failure. We're wired to survive, and through the generations, the hundreds of thousands of years, those stories have kept us limited, really. And we've only a few people were able to break out of that, and that's why we see certain categories of people who happen to be, always life falls in their lap, and they benefit, and other people just can't jump ahead no matter what. And I did meet the author of this book. Is called the Manhood Manifesto, Mike Sherrick, at the Book Thinkers, and I invited him to come to the mastermind. He's not here today, but hopefully he can come across. But we can apply this as men too. What are we doing as men, and what are young men? How are we helping them not have to tie into that story? Because we hear it all the time. If you go to any success event, what are you hearing? I always start out with nothing. I was living, was it Matt Foley in a van down by the river? Of course, I'm not going to try to imitate Chris Foley. That's a wild journey to go to. But the idea is that that narrative gets told so often that everybody thinks that you have to be in that story. But we have our own story, and your own story is relative to who you are being versus who you can be. You have the potential to be with no limits. And so when we look at perception and how our brain is wired, the generational stories of the nothingness, that muscle, the paradigm is going to always be there. How do we atrophy it? By strengthening the muscle of where we want to be. Like Louis says, okay, I can be aware of this negativity that's happening, yet I'm not going to give any attention there. There's no focus there. I'm going to focus only on the things that I want. I can focus on with imagination the feeling and the vision of how is my life being, and if I can use the will to keep focused on that and the discipline to do it, take the actions. I like that, imagine action, our new word for the day.
Yeah, love it.
So that's where we have to be focused.
Yeah, I love it. What you focus on expands, guys. So focus on the positive. Go ahead, Leroy, wrap it up.
Yeah, on the way I look at suffering, we only suffer in our imagination. If we want something bad enough, we know it's going to be a lot of pain. Like, losing weight isn't something that's easy to do. You've got to do a lot of things you've been accustomed to not doing, and so if you can look at it as suffering, but if you look at it as, hey, I'm going to reach this goal and it's gonna give me a whole new life, it's just a natural consequence of what you're after. Not you don't have to actually suffer. You see it as suffering. You can just, you know, it's it's the joy. How I wish I could quote the verse. There's something in the Bible about uh, the joy that was set before you was it. Well, I think what it means is, or what I would say it means is that the joy we see in front of us is greater than the pain that we have to go through to get there. So, we suffering is we try things and we fail. That's one of the consequences of trying something. If you never try something, you will never fail. So that's how I yeah, that's a few of my thoughts.
Exactly. If you don't try something, you can't fail. So you just live a stagnant life. You do nothing, right? And so what a great point that is, Leroy. Anything we tried, the consequence is we could fail. We could also win. Those are the only two things that can happen. So you have to make a choice. Once again, life comes down to making choices. We can choose to try and risk the consequence, or make no movement at all and just sit where we are. Right. Yeah. Michael, go ahead. I saw your hand
And
up,
be
buddy.
a freaking plant.
Yeah. Well, and I love what Leroy just said, because for me, it's Alex, you got to ask yourself, right? What is the climb that you're on? Are you climbing a hill in your life, or are you climbing your Everest? Because I'm telling you, buddy, if you think you haven't suffered enough, that tells me that you're only climbing a hill. You're waiting for somebody to throw you down into a pit so you have something to climb out of. My God, man, that sucks. Climb a mountain instead of fall into the pit.
Yeah.
Love it. Love it. Yep. Love it. Thank you, Mike. Yaniv, go ahead and wrap it up. We're at the
Yeah, I
top.
want to wrap it up, but the reason I want to wrap this up with this, it's a prayer that I actually prepared for myself, that I'm reading it every day, but I think it's a prayer of wisdom, and I think we should finish with that, because what we talked about up to now, I think it should be touch every one of you before we wrap it up. So here we go. So, God, I ask not for more riches, but for greater wisdom, with which to use wisely the gifts you have already placed within me. Grant me understanding, with faith, courage, and self discipline to direct my thoughts, my actions, and my ability towards a definite purpose. Help me to serve others, to grow in character, and to become the person you created me to be. May I wish the principles of success with integrity, humility, and gratitude, creating a value for others and living every life a touch better than I found it. Amen. Thank you.
I love it. Thank you, Yaniv. With that, we're going to wrap things up, guys. Next week, we go into a really deep chapter called organized planning. All right. Michael's going to freak out on that one. So read the chapter 6 on organized planning. Thank you for showing up today. I appreciate you not only showing up for us, but for showing up for yourselves. And one last comment, when you see the replay go out on YouTube, I would ask you all to please put a comment on the YouTube recording and let people know what it is that you're getting out of this hour that we spend together each and every week. That's going to help us grow as a 17 Club men's only mastermind. Let's go out there and change the world. Thank you guys. Talk to you later.
God bless.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.